She gets ideas about roaming around too much if she's left.
Okay, so this is 5 gallon, yeah?
Behind is 5 gallon. I can show you a rear view
Oh,
there.
yeah.
So that's the so basically, let me so on the collection side, you know, we're sort of just thinking about different ways to do it. So this is one model. I'll just show you the rear view.
Sure.
I mean, Rebecca's husband has COVID, so you might.
Yeah, that's what I'm
yeah.
saying a little bit for you. So the rear, so that I service it from here. It's got a handle. You pull out, you know, just twist off the top, and then for the dry chamber, I just dump it in a big barrel out back and can sit there for a year or two and turn it into soil.
Compost it?
Yeah, composting that. And this I use to fertilize this area here.
So you don't do anything with the pea before you fertilize?
Well, that's kind of depends. Like mostly, my system is dump. I mean, in principle, my system is to dump the pea on the frames. So I did a whole bunch of different things in terms of. This is my 5th year of doing this kind of gardening, and I'm not a gardener, but I kind of been fiddling with the format. So the first couple years I was going in different places with a straw bale garden approach. Just you dump fertilizer conventionally or pea by my system on straw bales and maybe top it with some compost, and then you just plant directly into the bales. And some of these tomatoes are just growing directly in the bale.
So you put the seedlings, well, the starts, you dug a hole right into the bales?
You sort of like now it'd be easy to do it. You can just, you know.
I see, yeah.
So
And you didn't have a problem with it getting too dry?
So I did that for a couple years on a small and then on a large scale, and I did. They, you know, when it doesn't rain, it gets really dry, and if once it composts, it frankly creates a hole in the bale, you know, eventually, and that's not exactly ideal for the plant. So this is where then I tried all sorts of sacks on racks. And so up at the student farm, we have a lot of sacks on racks experiments where we're using different combinations. So this is a typical sacks on rack.
So on the straw, is the straw expensive, easily available in like countries where you might implement this?
I would say generally no. I mean, this country, yes. So that's why we're here thinking of like urban, sort of typical redlined area where you have no plants, no shade, no coolness. So thinking of, so you start to see that, like our dream would be having this kind of garden, which you can create really rapidly with straw bales. So you come in with a wood, say you've got a vacant lot somewhere in the U.S. and you come in with a truck full of wood chips to separate you from the contaminated soil, pervasively contaminated soil. Bring in a truck of straw bales, create yourself a lounge area like this here, create yourself a bale, you know, these garden beds. So for 1/10 the price of a wooden, wood-framed raised bed, and a million times easier, because really in 45 minutes a group of people just arrange them how they like it to fit the
straw
space. So, yeah. So
and where do you get them?
Farms have them, you know.
We're selling them at Eddyville yesterday.
Yeah, you can buy them at Agway, Eddydale. I get them from the Cornell farms. I got these from a farmer at King Ferry. She's got thousands of them. So and then I've grown them in round bales too. But
you do have to keep track of the watering whenever it gets dry, like more than if they're in soil.
No, but what I'm saying is, like with this system, so I did like a bunch of sacks on racks and swimming pools on spools, you know, this kind of spool like that. A baby pool sitting on that is a good garden. But those all had limited volume. The one I had made though a cold frame in which I used straw bales to make a cold frame. And then I just dumped all the excess crap I had in there, and I was like, wow, this is the best of all my experiments. Of all my experimental systems, the best was not the straw bale, not the sacks on racks, not the pools on spools, but the bales as rails. You know, so I just, when I made it was intended as a cold frame, you know, a square of straw bales covered by a piece of glass. It didn't work as cold frame because I was never there to open it up when I needed to or close it when I needed to. You know, it's not in my backyard. But then when I just use it as a dump, I realized, wow, it's got enough volume and enough organic matter that it holds, and it doesn't have all the problems of the straw bales. It doesn't have the problems of the other systems. And if you do it on a grand enough scale, I feel like it kind of looks nice. So if we come over here and just,
I don't understand what you just explained
okay,
though. Like,
if you see this, it's clearer here because it's younger.
so it's still using straw bales. Oh, but you're using them as a frame.
As a box, yeah.
And so you put soil in here.
It's not soil, it's all, so I'll show you what's in here. So this is a younger one, so it's more evident what happened, but you just build a frame a meter or so apart, and then so this is what we use now as our mix. The mix is maced over, so you go with you know, just chop up corn stalks, mixed with wheat straw. So in where I work in Kenya, yes, this is very pervasively available, and they do have rice straw. So this is, and this is sorghum bagasse, so making sweet sorghum juice. That's what this bed is made of. This particular bed contrasts sorghum bagasse mixed with some wheat straw and compost and a little bit of biochar topped with nothing actually. But
So you're trying to find things that are just easily available, like
Yeah.
rather than go buy topsoil or
Right.
compost or something.
yeah, so if you compare the price of what the price tag of this, it's like you know, very trivial compared. So this is more conventional stuff. So here we're testing. This is what the industry uses.
Coconut.
Coconut coir, fine and coarse. This is conventional potting mix. But we've beat conventional potting mix. You can see here, I think we handily beat. This is our sorghum based and sorghum based against coir based. And throughout the season, you know, we put it in July, so it's quite late to do that. But
Oh, your tomatoes look great if you put them in July.
yeah,
You don't have the deer or the
they
woodchucks.
come they come and take their tax from time to time. But anyway, I think it's kind of notable to me how these mixes of organic underutilized resource are called ours, organic underutilized resource. So it's compost, which every municipality has if they're composting, and then cereal residues, which every countryside has. You grow some kind of cereal, probably, right? So you just harvest that and chop it up. It can look terrible. We have experiments at the Dillman our high tunnel experiments. It's just that it looks like, you know, corn stalks chopped up. It just looks like chopped up corn stalks. A little bit of wheat straw mixed in there, and that's to kind of give the same contrast that the fine coir, coarse coir has. A little bit of texture from the coarse stuff, a little bit of speed composting from the softer stuff, and then some compost in that. You can't tell which ones are fertilized with conventional versus urine. You can't figure out you can't see looking at the plants which ones are on soil versus this completely pathetic looking mix. And then over time it turns into something that looks really nice. You know, compost into nice compost. But initially it looks like it just looks non-credible. And yet the plants, you know, we just don't have differences significantly, neither to look at it nor to analyze it. So this is, so I'm just saying that this is so much cheaper than, and easier. So I just put this in one evening. They were having a party here and I was kind of counter-socially just arranging them here. They just dump, I mean, it's a chore to fill it because it's actually a huge volume.
Yeah.
And so like you need to have a lot of yard waste, which I do. You need to have, you know, you can just jam in there whatever you got basically with this sort of a mind towards what, you know, try to get to a C to N ratio. But you mainly want C and C and C. Your N is coming from
The pea.
so you just kind of dump P on it from, you know, as
How
available.
often? Like how do you get enough pea? You gather it from
There's
home?
not much pee in there actually. So this is fish effluent from aquaponics operation at Cornell. But you know, it doesn't actually take that much pee to get things going. You know, for the first bit, I dumped it on the fall, and then I hardly put any on there. The plants, if the plants look like they're at first, this array looks tragic, tiny yellow plants for the longest time. I'm like, what's wrong? I dump pee on there and I'm like,
my
oh,
goodness.
needed
Wow.
NPK, yeah. So like just dumping urine on a real carbon-rich thing, I just do it on a, you know, like I don't know, maybe these are getting pallid, so maybe they, you know, I could add more now. You don't want to add so much that you're causing greenhouse gas. Let me show off my new model of
So if you add too much, it goes to nitrous oxide.
That's my thinking is that, you know, if you're overdoing it, this is saying you could get into that problem. So, right?
But it's really the waste, the substrate for the plants as much as the pee. That's what you're working. Even though it's called peecycle, we think it's all about pee. It's a lot more than pee.
Oh yeah. It's a big carbon game, really. Yeah. And then it's using the Grace. So this is our latest design in progress. It's not. I haven't finished it yet, but so this is thinking like, how do you have a sort of
Oh, you put it right in the
glamping
watering can.
That's okay. That's for now. So it's just
That's
it was actually a virgin toilet seat from reuse, and then again the bucket in the back, and then for now the watering can. But we're really happy with our marble sink from reuse, and then this building thing, which I call Tinker Toilet. You know, just like you rip 2x4s into 2x2s, and just like just by this simple trick of right angles, you can make some. It's super robust. It doesn't feel unstable, but it's super primitive too. And you just add amenities as you so desire. So this, we're gonna have a tank for water that goes into the hand rinsing part. And I'll show you around.
And then you're putting sawdust on top of the solid for the smell issue.
Yeah,
That probably helps with the compost too.
Yeah. So and the hanging doors seem to work really well. I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, it's
Oh, wow.
very
Really slick. So my designs have to be like, okay, how do I design it so there was a hole that nice decor. Okay, so the back shows Gracie! Grace! Gracie! So the idea, we haven't hooked it up yet. I just have to get on with some time to do some plumbing work, but so the idea from the urinal and from the toilet that the thing's gonna go through a series of resource recovering tanks where the urine is aging. When it ages, the pH goes up. The urea spontaneously with urease from environmental microbes becomes ammonium. Then that goes to ammonia as the pH goes up, and it volatilizes, and you can capture that on oxidized biochar. So the idea is, as the tanks fill up, processively the nitrogen is being captured. At the end of the day, I'll put I have some magnesium charged biochar in the last one inside there to pull out the phosphorus. So you're capturing the nutrients as the peak comes through the system. Ideally as sort of water when it goes out, or salt water, whatever is left. But you've got the nitrogen, the char you've made from the poop. That's kind of the idea so if you think of a low resource, those guys need some nitrogen. I gotta put on some feet. Gracie!
I think that's
She's up there. Gracie, come! She's gotta get in the car. Anyway, so that's the idea, is that, and then in the water coming off the roof, we could have a series of water capture stations there. Anyway, so that's the idea. Could you have this is sort of a garden idea for now, like it's not sort of super permanent. Oh, good girl. Okay, let me just throw the car. Go.
What do you think? Have you seen anything like this before?
No. This is my first time.
So you don't at home, do you have systems for like collecting human waste and reusing it?
Actually, no.
No?
No. There is no way. In some areas, like if I told about Kabul city, in some planet areas there are some canalization, and they goes through that, and in some non-planet area it goes directly to Kabul river and other
So, but there's pipes from the houses or apartments directly into the river.
Yeah, sure.
Or
So it's plumbed into the river.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just sort of think about that as a waste, you know? If you just think of all of those nutrients and carbon going to waste while the soil is like begging for those things, you know? Doesn't make any sense, right? So I'm thinking if you, like, I'm just dreaming, like, cobble, if, I don't know if the environment is favorable to gardening, but if it were just kind of creating these spaces, using, you know, you have to do an inventory of what you have in the organic underutilized resources category. What carbon sources do you have that are, you know, maybe not being optimally utilized, that could receive that bodily nutrient? And then could you create these little spaces where people kind of get used to the idea of the circularity? You're trying to raise awareness, but just by using a facility like this, and then you're dumping this. So my theory goes that I dump the stuff from my watering can, in this case, or the thing, onto the bales. And so I'm composting these, so it's not directly going on anyone's food. They can see that they're not putting on their food. By the time it's compost, I don't think anybody thinks it's urine anymore. It's compost, right? So just like
So you wouldn't put it directly on the plant?
I do it all the time, you know, but I'm not saying you have to. So the idea would be, so in this case, sometimes I use the fish effluent to go directly onto the plants if I think people are going to be sensitive about it. Personally, I dump it on the plants all the time. When I need, the fish effluent's not as strong as pee. So depending on whether I need strong or weak, I can use the fish effluent to kind of just, and then I can be composting my compost or this. And then when these get too composty, as some of those already are, then I can,
Put them
you know,
into the
when it's
soil.
time to, you know, this garden at some point goes to bed, I can pick the bale, either start new beds with these old bales, dumping them in the middle, reframe with fresh bales, dump the old bales into there, shore up whatever needs shoring up. So I call it grow as you go, to kind of as you go being peeing, but also as you go being, over time, you're accumulating these organic resources. And so you're building this organic matter, getting more and more, it's better as it matures, obviously. And then, you know, I'm already thinking, like, where's my next bed, you know? How am I gonna make a new bed look? You know, it's gonna take me all 10 minutes. Once I dump the bales, I'll like move them around till I'm like, okay. Then I'll start dumping my leaves. And so it's this, so I feel like this landscape is kind of growing over time. If it's a sunny place, you go for those arches, give yourself some shade. And so I feel like it's a sort of slow motion landscape design where you're gradually building it up with the resources from your body and, you know, creating
What you
something you
have.
like. Yeah. So that's the idea. And then, you know, innovation around the amenities. You know, what can you do? What amenities do you want? Do you want a big loo? Do you want to loaded with amenities, or do you want more stations to get more people serviced? You know, you don't care what the experience is that much. So you just kind of decide, is it a luxury glamping thing, or is it a, you know, minimal resource? Get what you need, move on. So I'm kind of interested in the luxury glampy type of vibe, just to sort of lure people in and have them have a positive experience. And at festivals or whatever, but you know, maybe some that are, you know, pee and run kind of an arrangement, but then some that are like more of a lounge suite kind of a vibe. I always kind of like, you know, so there's like 1, 2, 3. That was a more minimalistic design that someone had. The same guy who made that one made that, and I kind of just upgraded that a little bit in my mind to a more. I felt that was a little too minimalist for me. It's more like a porta
This
potty.
one over here?
Yeah, that green thing.
Okay.
I kind of ditched that, thinking, you know, too much like a conventional porta potty in terms of the minimalism. I was like,
But like at festivals, that's what they have probably, right? Porta potties.
yeah, like at Cornell Slope Day, there's a trillion of them, and it just irks me. And I'm like, why don't we capture those resources and use them
There's
for
a lot of
farm?
pee on Cornell Slope too.
A lot of pee.
This is a Cornell celebration where everybody drinks a lot. Did you go last year at the end of classes?
But there's like 1,000 porta potties. It's really, you know, for someone in my mindset. So there's another guy going to build a tea house. So I put this here as a tea house implication. So like, you know, you could keep building these sort of ephemeral amenities. And this is kind of an ephemeral amenity. If you don't own this land, hypothetically, I don't own this land. You know, so if you're busted for illegal, you know, occupancy, plausible deniability, there's just not, you know, not going to kill anybody. Just blow it down, and it's a lot of organic matter. you know. But
So have you talked to like any of the community gardens or
we had a garden
Truman's
exchange.
yeah?
Was it last week or the week before?
Uh-huh.
Where the community, I mean, I don't know how many of them really showed up. There were a bunch of people here. I'm not sure how many were really from the community gardener versus just our usual suspects. But,
The one issue is like when you have limited space, like my yard where I grow a lot of vegetables, the bales take more room than the boards. But you're right, the boards are super expensive.
really expensive, yeah. And then you have to actually have skills to put them together, you know.
Right.
So, like,
Although
at this-
they have those things now where
Or
those
just
joint
slot 'em
things.
down.
I have not tried them, but
That would, again, but you're getting a price tag here, you know.
oh
doing
yeah, the
all that.
boards are like super expensive.
Yeah, so these are like, what they cost me, $3.50 each.
Mm-hmm.
So to put up my first garden at the student farm at Dillman, I spent $125, got like 25 bales, and could put up a garden with $125. Meanwhile, they had bought $1,200 worth of wood that was sitting in a pile for like many moons before they got. Once they put them up, they're beautiful, but it was 10 times as much money and like infinite amount more time because they bought them and they just sat around for ages and before they put them together.
But they do take up less space.
Yeah,
That's the deal. And they.
but you can garden the bales too, I gotta say.
Oh, okay.
So when I ran out of space at some point, I did plant tomatoes into the bales, and you can do that, and I've done it for years. So, and it's there are books written about straw bale gardening, so you can use
Okay.
that real estate.
Okay. Oh, I'm interested because my raised beds, all the boards are kind of rotten, so the soil's running everywhere.
So that's the thing. All of it's realistically going to require maintenance. So you might then when this gets maintained, it becomes part of the. It goes right into the mix. So I sort of feel like I don't feel like it's very wasteful.
Although boards become part of the pathways, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, but still, yeah, not part of the garden.
But still, that counts. So I think the garden. I mean, I count the pathways as part of the garden. So that's
Okay.
That's fair. But again, how much do you want to invest if you're likely going to get thrown on your ear shortly? You know, because I think
Do you think you're gonna get kicked out of here?
I don't own the place. It's not so much that I know that we're not going to pay the rent for all the time, but it's more that I'm channeling the idea of illegal occupancy of a crappy lot in an urban setting.
Okay.
So I'm looking for a method that sort of is inherently ephemeral, and you don't feel like your investment is going to break your heart. Because it is famously the case that investments in urban gardening lead to gentrification, which is a good sign. People feel their neighborhood is better, and that leads to getting kicked out when people think this is now valuable real estate. So then you get thrown out because you had no right to be there. So I sort of feel like thinking of that dynamic. How could we have a method wherein
Yes.
it's making the place safer? Because if the soil is heavy metal contaminated, which it's presumed, a reasonable presumption that that's the case in any urban environment, if only because of leaded gas. Thank you, Cornell University. The remedy that people suggest for dealing with contaminated soil is to put a big wad of organic matter down. So this, the wood chips, and then this will eventually be a layer of organic matter, which again, protecting your kids who are playing there. And then, just the idea that you can set up a seating area. My seating area is no great
seating
shape,
area,
but it's but you can sit there, and so the idea that for a little money you can create bales of whatever. You just get a box and you stuff, put some strings, stuff the stuff in there, and just tie it up. And so, if you wanted to create your own bale styling, because you have whatever rye straw or whatever it is, or
Weed straw. I have a lot of weed straw.
wheat straw, or Japanese knotweed that's dead enough to be credible as a source. You can make your own bales or bale-like things to create. I mean, you have to be creative on it.
So do you has anybody looked at this in India as a alternative to burning rice, which I guess is the main Delhi source, Mumbai, I guess, source
Smog source.
smog source. So they
I have associates in India. I should take them on a virtual tour of this to see whether they consider that. I was in Lucknow, and my students field sites were kind of a bit out from town. I was staying in the lake now. And as we traversed from the urban center to the rural village, we go through these mined out areas. They'd mined all the soil out to make bricks to build, look now, apparently. So then I'm like thinking these pits, these vast moonscape would be perfect for this. So the rice straw coming from the other side meets the excreta coming from the city to give you this. Like, I'm like, why not? It's already a pit, so you don't even need to make a raised bed. You just need to, fill the pit, So that I was thinking, like, that's kind of one of the inspirations for me thinking about doing this. So there's another aspect, which is this biochar aspect.
Yeah.
So this is our fertilizer here.
So Johannes Lehman is collaborating with you on this, or you're just doing this?
He's one of the founding guys of this spot. There's a guy who's just out picking tomatoes that runs a non-digital dark room in there with cyanotypes and whatnot. You can go take a peek if you want. But this is a kind of conventional low-end biochar making capability here. So our idea, and this is an earlier model that I made and decided it was too inefficient, and then this is kind of, I think, a reasonable standard for low resource settings like ours. You put whatever in there, and supposedly it creates this turbulence pattern that protects the burning material. You have this huge flame, but the turbulence it burns pretty clean if it's dry, and the oxygen's limited by the nature of the turbulence pattern of the air coming up. I think that's overrated relative to the fact what you really do is you go layer by layer, and the latest layer that you put in there deprives the penultimate layer from oxygen. So it's just the fact that you layer it like that together with some flame curtain.
But you're still burning each layer, or how is it?
As soon as it starts going gray because it's making ash, then you put on your new layer. And so the top layer isn't completely burned because you just turn it off, but adding water. But you've done, as you go down, it gets. So in my version of this in Africa, I put a trapdoor on the bottom, and so pull out the red hot coals from the bottom and dump them in, cover them with pea, and so and then that stuff is the best fertilizer. It's competitive with conventional fertilizer, only better because it's got all the carbon in it.
Okay.
So if you just put biochar in your thing, it's going to initially soak up the nutrients, and so you're kind of depriving your plants. In the long run it's good, but in the short run, but if you soak it, you pop it, you quench the flame by popping it in this nutrient bath, then you get this really nutritious, nutrient laden product, which is really good. Anyway,
I never understood this. So you're trying to, I guess I don't understand the difference between this and charcoal, like
It's the
traditional
same thing.
charcoal. So when you drive around the road, like in Africa, and people have these pits by the side of the road that are covered with, that's exactly what you're doing?
basically it is the same. Yeah, only that
You have a
I think
cover
the
on
carbon,
this?
carbon, this because this goes really fast, that goes really slow.
So you're not making the same anaerobic conditions that charcoal is.
It will go to ash if it's not reasonably anaerobic. So this is the two tactics I mentioned, the air curtain and the layering, give you sufficient anaerobic reaction that you get this. It's the same as charcoal.
Oh, okay.
But that's considered to have a bad carbon footprint worse than this. I mean, maybe people should start making charcoal in countries and kilns. But so that 2 meter super sack, that's full of charcoal from California. Where I tried it. It's innovative enough that it did not, in my opinion, work very well. So these beds are blended at 10%. So there's a sort of the literature says that you lose less carbon to greenhouse gases and nitrogen to greenhouse gases if your biochar's in there. So in the long run, you get better water holding capacity, better material persistence. So like you lose a lot of this stuff over time, and that's going off either as runoff or as greenhouse gases. So supposedly there's a dramatic effect of clay can also do it. It's start having something surfacey. Give it more surfaces for the microbes and whatever to form these more durable organic matter. I'm not allowed to say humus, but humus.
Yeah.
Humus.
I wonder for the water holding capacity of the system. here in Ithaca, the weather is not too hot, and it usually rains weekly. So there is no need to be irrigated weekly. But in some other countries, like my country, the weather is very hot and there is no rain at the late spring or early fall and the whole summer season. So the system will lose the water very, very soon. So we have to increase the frequency of irrigation for the garden. What would be your idea about if we dig the ground and plant it under the ground instead of planting above the surface of the ground?
I like that for a couple of reasons. One is that it would give you that soil to work with in making your compost. Compost is excellent for holding water.
Yeah.
With the biochar, it's even better. And then using urine. I mean, obviously, it's mostly water, right? So that's a form of water. If you're not flushing toilets, if you're saving your gray water and your bodily liquids, you just have more water and nutrients to work with to do this. So for me, it's like really doing an inventory of what are your in the system. How are you going to keep your water? And I like your idea very much of putting it underground, because then again, you're using the soil component as you make your mix. You're enriching it so it holds water a lot better, and you're keeping all the valuables.
Okay, good question. I think it is very clear that the water holding capacity of soil is much more high than the air. So when it is in the soil, it will hold water better than when it is on the air. So this can help the plant that access to the water better than when it is in the air.
This is so much better than my other systems for here. It used to drive me crazy how just if I was farming on the bales, it was such a chore to keep it moist enough. Very, very. This is nothing like that.
Okay.
Because that's a huge, basically, insulation, right? So I don't feel like it's losing. I mean, it's just nothing. The experience is not similar at all to what I had, the chore that I had keeping things moist before. Now it's really hard to dry it out. It's a vast amount of organic matter in there. It just holds everything really well. Yeah, I haven't really had a lot of. Again, it's not Cubble, so. Yeah. But I like your idea a lot. And I wonder what are alternatives if people are lazy, because if people, that's a lot. Digging holes is, I tell you, like an alternative way of, if you're in a dry environment, instead of having a metal thing, you can just dig a hole and make your biochar in a pit.
Yeah.
If it's a recalcitrant, hard to burn thing, you have to put a smokestack and a kind of a burn box, like a can with holes in it, and a smokestack to help air come through it a little bit more. Again, you're kind of finding the sweet spot between no movement, nothing's going to happen. So you have to get it to combust somehow, but then limit the oxygen so you get the charcoal. So you can do that in a dry place. Here you can't do it because all the heat goes into your wet soil. But you could, so if you've got the energy to dig, you can dig. If you don't, you can imagine, I hate to suggest plastic, but you could, somehow, cover, the thing to keep that liquids in, I suppose. I haven't thought about doing that here. So I guess you just have to sort of decide what your resources and energy allow you to do.
Yeah. What would be your idea about using pea as a fertilizer for greenhouses producing cucumber, tomato, squash, and other fresh vegetables?
My concern might be public opinion, so I think you want to, for anything that's sensitive, like what people think, we pasteurize it. The experiments we're running is in a high tunnel or with pasteurized product. And so you could, if you have a hot environment, figure out a way to use, your solar like a solar dryer, set something up where the pea is running through a hot thing, to get hot enough to be pasteurized. So if there's any concerns around that, you might want to do something to do with pasteurization.
diseases aren't transmitted through pee.
No,
So
I
it's
kind
more
of think
of
it's
a-
bogus.
It's more of a mindset.
I think it's so. That's what I find weird is like catering to this mindset. When I don't think it's a real issue personally. But pee can be contaminated with fecal coliforms
Right.
and blah blah blah. So I don't know. Maybe it's smart. The reason that system is attractive that I showed you with the pee having the nutrients captured in the on the biochar is because the biochar that's captured the ammonia there has never been in contact with the pee. So any complaints people have about microbes or chemical contaminants, there could be pharma residue. That's not going to be in your biochar if your biochar is above the urine. It's more effective at capturing it above than it is if you put the chart in there. So that's technically better. But then it's also psychologically better because you can say this is like untouched by excreta. So I think you have to kind of decide what are your issues. If people worry about that, then you kind of have to contend with that. Both your workers and your consumers, if they have issues, then you got to address those issues. Either through educating them, providing evidence, and even experience. You can figure out a way that they can see. But I do dump pee directly on the bales here when I feel like it. I sort of say I won't, and then I need to, so I do, and then so I don't recommend. Better to come up with a clear plan.